He stood near the corner table like a man who had learned to take up as little space as possible, shoulders slightly hunched, one hand gripping the strap of a worn backpack, while the other gently held his little daughter's fingers. The cafe buzzed with soft laughter, the clinking of cups, and quiet conversations that seemed to grow just a little quieter when people noticed him. Not silent, just enough to feel it. That subtle shift in air that told him he had already been measured and dismissed. His jacket was clean but tired, the fabric faded in places that spoke of years, not style. His boots carried the dust of long hours, and his hands, rough, marked with dark traces of metal that never quite washed away, rested protectively over the small girl beside him. She looked up at him with bright, trusting eyes, unaware of the silent judgment moving around them like an invisible current. "Daddy, can we sit there?" she asked softly, pointing to a table by the window where sunlight spilled in warm, golden lines that he followed her gaze, hesitating for just a fraction of a second too long. He had already noticed the glances from the couple seated nearby, the slight tightening of lips, the quick whisper exchanged behind a lifted hand. He had seen this before, felt it too many times to mistake it. Still, he forced a small smile, the kind that tried to make the world feel safe for her even when it wasn't. "Of course," he said gently. They walked toward the table. But just as he pulled out the chair for his daughter, a server appeared with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said, her tone smooth, practiced. "This table is reserved." He paused, glancing at the empty signless table, then nodded slowly. "I understand." They moved to another spot, smaller, tucked near the back. It didn't matter. He made it matter less. He always did, but the looks didn't stop. A group of young men by the counter exchanged amused glances. One of them smirked, leaning closer to his friend as if sharing a joke too good to keep quiet. "Wrong place," he muttered under his breath. Just loud enough. The father heard it. Of course he did. He heard everything. He always had. But he said nothing. He simply pulled out the chair, helped his daughter sit, and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face with a tenderness that didn't belong to the cold room around them. "What do you want to eat?" he asked softly. She smiled, swinging her legs slightly. "Something sweet." "Something sweet it is," he replied, though his eyes flicked briefly to the menu, calculating silently. Minutes passed. No one came to take their order. The same server moved between tables, laughing lightly with others, attentive, warm, but when she passed them, her gaze slid away as if they were part of the furniture. Invisible, but inconvenient, his daughter's smile began to fade just a little. "Daddy, are we not ordering?" "We will," he said calmly, though a quiet tension had begun to settle behind his eyes. "They're just busy." Another 10 minutes that a man at the next table chuckled, not even bothering to hide it now. "Some people don't get hints," he said, shaking his head. The words hung in the air like smoke. The father's jaw tightened, but he remained still. He had endured worse than words. Life had taught him that reacting often cost more than silence. And right now, the only thing that mattered was the little girl sitting across from him, watching, learning how the world worked. So he smiled again. For her. Then the door opened. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Something shifted the moment she stepped inside, a presence that carried quiet authority. Conversations softened, the staff straightened slightly, and the rhythm of the room adjusted without a single command being spoken. The owner had arrived. She walked in with steady steps, her eyes moving across the cafe not with indifference, but with attention. Real attention. The kind that noticed details others ignored. And then she saw them. Not just a glance. Not a passing look. She truly saw them. The man sitting too carefully, the untouched menu, the child trying to stay cheerful, the space around them that felt just a little colder than the rest of the room. Her expression changed. She approached slowly, her heels soft against the floor, until she stood beside their table. The father looked up, immediately preparing himself for another polite dismissal, another quiet humiliation wrapped in courtesy. He began to rise. "We'll leave," he said calmly, already gathering his bag. But she spoke before he could move. "Sit. You're staying." 3 words, clear, firm, unshakable. The entire cafe seemed to freeze. The server who had ignored them stopped mid-step. The men by the counter fell silent. Even the clinking of cups seemed to disappear into the weight of those words. The father blinked, caught off guard. We didn't want to cause." "You didn't," She interrupted gently, her voice softer now, but no less certain. They did. Her gaze lifted, sweeping across the room, not angry, but unmistakably disappointed. It was the kind of look that made people shift in their seats, suddenly aware of themselves in a way they hadn't been before. She turned back to the little girl and knelt slightly, her expression warming. "What would you like to eat?" The girl hesitated, then smiled shyly. "Something sweet." The owner smiled back. "Then something sweet it is." She stood again, her tone changing just enough to carry across the room. "Full service." Now. The server rushed forward, her earlier indifference replaced with nervous urgency. "Of course, right away." The father sat slowly, still processing what had just happened. His daughter beamed, her earlier doubt gone, replaced with simple joy. And around them, the cafe remained quiet, not because it had to be, but because no one dared to break the silence that those 3 words had created. For the first time since he walked in, the father didn't feel out of place, he felt seen.